Hey folks, welcome back. So a couple weeks ago, we got started on building some fence braces for our exclusion fence down here by the Millhouse. And so this week we are gonna get back to work on that, get some more line posts put in here, get some fence strung, get some gates up, and get this little project finished off. All right, so our next step in getting our fence down here by the Millhouse is we need to run a couple strands of wire between this brace and our brace that's down at the other end. And what this will do is it'll give us a way to line up with when you're looking down through here, because those wires will be sort of tight, and that will give us something to line up our line post on when we drive those in between our braces. Then once we get the line post in, we can come back, we'll add in the rest of the strands of wire, and we can get those tensioned up. And I think that's all the steps that we have for doing that. I may be forgetting one or two things, but we'll cover that once we get to it. All right, so we've got almost all of our wires strung on this side of our fence here. We're gonna put up a total of 6 wires. We've got 5 of them on there. And for the top wire, what we're gonna do is we're going to put one of these little guys. And what it is it's a gauge to tell you how tight your fence is. So on some of these kind of horizontal parts here, there's some little notches. And depending on how far it's compressed and where the end of the spring lines up with the notches, it tells you how many pounds of tension you got on your fence. Now, the trick to putting these on is you want to end up with your ratchet through this little loop right on here. And the way you do that is you got to disassemble this thing, take both sides out, and then run your ratchet through like this, and then squeeze these ends together, and they squeeze together tight enough that they'll fit through the spring. You run that all the way through like that, and you grab the other side, hook that back through there, take that through, and then shove that part back up through there again, and voila, you got your tensioner on your spring gauge here. And then we'll just loop the end of the fence around on that side, and then as we tighten up our ratchet right here, we can just watch the spring and see how tight it gets. So as I was editing, I realized I didn't exactly explain how this tensioner gauge works and why you only put one of them on a fence that has a total of 6 strands on it. Now, the way this works is there's a couple little notches on here that you tension up your fence until you see the end of your spring kind of hitting somewhere in between those notches, depending on how tight you like it. Then, once you get this one set, what you can do is you kind of feel this one, you go, okay, that's got about this much, and then you go down to your next one, oh, that one's definitely not quite as tight, so you'll tighten this one up down here a little bit more. Feel that one, okay, it does feel about the same. Then you move down to the next one, you do the same thing, that one's a little loose, or maybe that one's a little too tight, we'll let a little off. Feel this one again, feel that one, and you just kind of work your way down the fence, and you can get them all fairly close just by having one wire that's tensioned the way you want it, and then using that as a reference point for all the rest of them. Alrighty, well, we got all the wires in on this side as well. So we got this side done, and we have that side over there done. So what we're gonna do next is, I think there's a gate sitting somewhere over in that area on the other side of the creek, and I think it's a 16-footer. So I'm thinking we'll go grab that, bring that over here, and then maybe get it mounted over on our gate post right there. All right, so our next couple steps for getting this cross fence here finished up is, like I mentioned before, we got to get some sort of a board fence here. And this actually isn't going to be straight. It's going to have just a little bit of a bend in it. So we got our gate post here, and then we're going to have another post out about where that step in is, and then it'll come back in and join up to our brace post right there. And it should be about 7.5 or 8 feet on each side of this little board part. But either way, we still got to get another post in the middle here. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to use for the boards. I got to get that figured out yet. And then also we got to get another gate down at the far end closer to the farmhouse. And I've actually got that in the back of the truck. So we can go ahead and get that down there, get that in place. We might have to drive another post down there for that gate to connect into. I think we will. But either way, we're almost done. Just got a few little things to get this thing wrapped up. So for this gate that's down here near the farmhouse, there's a little bit of a weird section right here between our gate post and where the existing laneway is. And for this, all I did is just put in a few strands of barbed wire. It's not really pulled all that tight. It's just good enough to kind of create a barrier so that nothing's coming through here. And eventually that is going to get pulled back out of here, because our laneway, right through here, it's barely 12 feet wide. So we're going to be bumping this up to a 16-foot wide laneway. Also, you could have a 16-foot gate in there as well, which means that this line along through here is going to be coming this way further. So I wanted to make sure that we left plenty of space between where our gate was swinging to and where the old lane is. And then if we need to, I could put in a little bit of a board spacer or something in there to fill in any gap. But the barbed wire is temporary. It's definitely not up to the NRCS specs for fence, but that's okay because it's not going to be there for hopefully too much longer. Alrighty folks, so I think one of our last step, if not the last step, to get our fence finished up over here is we need to fill in our gap. I think it's right there with some boards. And what I'm gonna use for that are just some of these guys right over here. And these are kind of rejects from when we were doing the covered bridge deck. So these are 2x6. That's probably a little bit overkill for fence boards, but They're white oak, so they'll be a little bit more rot resistant, hopefully should last a bit longer. So we'll sort through these, see what we can find, cut them to length, and get those hooked up over there. Alrighty folks, well, I think that is going to do it. We got all our boards in, we got our gates hung, we got our wires strung, so that more or less does it down through here. Everything went pretty well considering I was doing it by myself and this was sort of a trial run to see how things went. It actually didn't go too bad, so that's a good thing. Hopefully it's a good omen for all the rest of the thousands of feet that are yet to go in here around the farm. So I think that is going to do it for this week's video. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next time.